Uh, all right, there you go. Hi, there you go. Okay, let's go. Port 9. Like many cities, small and large, the Red Ride had not been planned. Like Topsy, issues had grown. City planners never would have located it where it was in the first place. Downtown Derai was in a valley formed by Kinduskig stream, which ran through the business district on a diagonal form. On a diagonal. Let's go again. Okay. Hello guys, welcome again to the reading of it live on stream. This is going to be part 2 of the book at the chapter 9. We've been doing we've been doing all of the book. You can find the restant parts in the videos and the bots on my YouTube channel. Remember, if you want to support the stream, you can follow, you can sub for free using Twitch Prime, or you can use sub paying $4.99 a month. I will greatly appreciate that, so we can keep the stream going on. Also, if you want to speed things up on the development of the stream, you can help us reach the donation goal that you can see on top of the little window where we are showing the page we're reading. There is a stream upgrade donation goal. You can help reaching the final goal, which is $500, by contributing with any amount you feel like that it's worth. By contributing any amount you want, right? Doesn't have to be the full amount, doesn't have to be zero. Any amount you want is going to be just fine. Having that said, let's keep. If you want to find this video on YouTube, maybe you're watching the repetition, the reruns, and you see this video, you can type exclamation point. Let me do that real quick. Exclamation point YT it 29. Let me do that quickly, and it will give you the direct link to this video on YouTube. Okay, let me erase that. We have this. I'm gonna duplicate. No. Need to copy this like that. If I change this, that's gonna change, right? Yep. Don't want that. Oh, there you go. That's it. Reference. Things the same thing. Let's hit duplicate. There you go. Exclamation point. YouTube it. Exclamation point it underscore and say shit. Oh wow. Okay. Hello everyone. Hello again. Welcome to the stream in which we read books in different languages. We are doing this it run. It's taking quite a while. We're only 130 pages in, and the book is quite long. So if you want to support the stream, you can do multiple things. You can follow me on Twitter. The username is on the top left corner of the screen. You can join the Discord server. You can find information down below in the information panel. You can follow me. You can sub for free with Twitch Prime. You can also, for more information on that point, you can do the command. You can write the command !prime on chat, or you can sub on the regular way, just paying $4.99 with a credit card or any electronic payment mean. Also, if you want to speed things up for the stream, which I will greatly appreciate, you can contribute with us by helping us reach the donation goal. You can see on the middle of the screen, on top and below the flags on top of the window where we display the page. You can contribute with any amount you desire. It doesn't have to be the full amount. It doesn't have to be the zero. Any amount you want is going to be just fine. Having that said, let's jump into the reading. All right. So as we were saying, we're in part 2, chapter 9 of it. It goes like this. Like many cities, small and large, the rye had not been planned. Like Topsy, it just grew. Planners never would have located it where it was in the first place. Downtown Zerai was in a deep valley formed by Kinnuskik Stream, which ran through the business district on a diagonal from southwest to northeast. The rest of the town had swarmed up the sides of the surrounding hills. The valley the township's original settlers came to had been swampy and heavily grown over. The stream and the Penobscot River into which Kinnuskik emptied were great things for traders, bad ones for those who showed crops or built their houses too close to them. The Kinnuskik in particular, because it flooded every 3 or 4 years. The city was still prone to flooding, in spite of the vast amounts of money spent over the last 50 years to control the problem. If the floods had been caused only by the stream itself, a system of dams might have taken care of things. There were, however, other factors. The Kinnuskik's low banks were one. The entire area logging drainage was another. Since the turn of the century, there had been many serious floods in the Rye, and one disastrous one in 1931. To make matters worse, the hill on which much of the Rye was built were honeycombed with small streams. Thorold Stream, in which the body of Cheryl and Monica had been found, was one of them. During periods of heavy rain, they were all apt to overflow their banks. If it rains 2 weeks, the whole downtown gets a sinus infection, stuttering Bill's dad had said once. The Kinnuskik was caged in a concrete canal 2 miles long as it passed through downtown. This canal dived under Main Street at the intersection of Main and Canal, becoming an underground river for half a mile or so before surfacing again at Basie Park. Canal Street, where most of the Rye's Canal Street where most of the Rye's bars were ranked like felons in a police lineup, paralleled the canal on its way out of town, and every few weeks or so the police would have to fish some drunk's car out of the water, which was polluted to drop dead levels by sewage and mill wastes. Fish were caught from time to time in the canal, but they were inedible mutants. On the northeastern side of town, the canal side, the river had been managed to at least some degree. A thriving commerce went on along in its wait went on all along it. A thriving commerce went on all along it, in spite of the occasional flooding. People walked beside the canal, sometimes hand in hand. If the wind was right, that was. If it was wrong, the stench took much of the romance out of such strolling. And at Basie Park, which faced the high school across the canal, there were sometimes Boy Scouts campouts and Cub Scout winter roasts. In 1969, the citizens will be shocked and sickened to discover that hippies, one of them had actually sewed an American flag to the seat of his pants, and that Pinko faggot was busted before you could say Gene McCarty, were smoking dope and trading pills up there. By '69, Basie Park had become a regular open air pharmacy. You should wait, people say. Somebody will get killed before they put a stop to it. And of course, someone finally did. A 17-year-old boy had been found dead by the canal, his veins full of almost pure heroin. What the kids called a tight white rail. After that, the druggies began to drift away from Basie Park, and there were even stories that the kid's ghost was haunting the area. The story was stupid, of course, but if it kept the speed freaks and the nutters away, it was at least a useful, stupid story. On the southwestern side of town, the river presented even more of a problem. Here the hills had been deeply cut open by the passing of the Great Glacier, and further wounded by the endless water erosion of the Kinderskeg and its webwork of tributaries. The bedrock showed through in many places, like a half-melted bones of dinosaurs. Veteran employees of the Derry Public Works Department knew that. Following the fall's first and hard frost, they could count on a good deal of sidewalk repair. On the southwestern side of town, the concrete will contract and grow brittle, and the bedrock will suddenly shatter up through it, as if the earth meant to hatch something. What grew best in the shallow soil which remained was plants with shallow root systems and hardy natures. Weeds and trash plants, in other words. Coffee trees, thick low bushes, and virulent infestations of poison ivy and poison oak grew everywhere they were allowed a foothold. The southwest was where the land fell away steeply on the area that was now in the right as the Barrens. The Barrens, which were anything but barrens, were a messy tract of land about a mile and a half wide by 3 miles long. It was bounded by Upper Kansas Street on one side and by Old Cape on the other. Old Cape was a low-income housing development, and the drainage was so bad over there that there were stories of toilets and sewer pipes actually exploding. The Kinderskeg ran through the center of Barrens. The city had grown up to the northeast and on both sides of it, but the only vestiges of the city down there were the right pump house number 3, the municipal sewage pumping station, and the city dump. Seen from the air, the barrens looked like a big green dagger pointing at downtown. To Ben, all this geography made with geology meant was a vague awareness that there were no more houses on the right side now. Okay. That's all it meant for him. The land had dropped away, a rickety whitewash railing about waist high ran beside the sidewalk, a token gesture of protection. He could faintly hear running water. It was the soundtrack of his continuing fantasy. He paused, looked out over the barrens, still imagining her eyes, the clean smell of her hair. From here, the Kinduski was only a series of twinkles seen through breaks in the thick foliage. Some kids said that there were mosquitoes as big as sparrows down there in this time of year. Others say there was a quicksand as you approached the river. Ben didn't believe about the mosquitoes, but the idea of the quicksand scared him. Slightly to his left, he could see a cloud of circling, diving seagulls, the dump. Their cries reached him faintly. Across the way, he could see Derry Heights and the low roofs of the Old Cape houses closest to the barrens. To the right of Old Cape, pointing skyward like a squat white finger, was the Derry standpipe. Directly below him, a rusty culvert stuck out of the earth, spilling discolored water down the hill in a glimmering little stream which disappeared into the tangled trees and bushes. Ben's pleasant fantasy of Beverly was suddenly broken by one far more grim. What if a dead hand flopped out of that culvert right now, right this second, while he was looking? And suppose that when he turned to find the phone and call the police, a clown was standing there. A funny clown wearing a baggy suit with a big orange puff for buttons. Suppose a hand fell on Ben's shoulder. Ben's pleasant fantasy of Beverly was suddenly broken by one far more grim. What if a dead hand flopped out of that culvert right now, right this second when he was looking? And suppose that when he turned to find the phone and called the police, a clown was standing there, a funny clown wearing a baggy suit with orange puffs for buttons. Suppose a hand fell on Ben's shoulder and he screamed. There was a laughter. He whirled around, shrinking against the white fence separating the safe. Same sidewalk of Kansas Street from the Same sidewalk of Kansas. There was a laughter. He whirled around, shrinking against the white fence separating the safe. Same sidewalk of Kansas Street from the wildly undisciplined barrens. The railing creaked audibly, and saw Henry Bowers, Bud Huggins, and Victor Chris standing there. "Hi, Tits," Henry said. "What do you want?" Ben asked, trying to sound brave. "I want to beat you up," Henry said. He seemed to contemplate his prospects soberly, even gravely. But oh, his black eyes sparkled. "I got to teach you something, Tits. You won't mind. You like to learn new things, don't you?" He reached for Ben. Ben ducked away. "Hold him, guys." Belk and Victor seized his arms. Ben squealed. It was a cowardly sound, rabbity and weak, but he couldn't help it. "Please, God, don't let them make me cry, and don't let them break my watch." Ben thought wildly. He didn't know if they would get around to breaking his watch or not, but he was pretty sure he would cry. He was pretty sure he would cry plenty before they were through with him. "Jeez, he sounds just like a pig," Victor said. He twisted Ben's wrists. "Don't he sound like a pig?" "He sure do." Bug, Bug, Belch giggled. Ben lunged first one way and then the other. Belk and Victor went with him easily, letting him lunge, then yanking him back. Henry grabbed the front of Ben's sweatshirt and yanked it upward, exposing his belly. It hung over his belt in a swollen droop. "Looky that good!" Henry cried in amazing disgust. "Jesus, please us!" Victor and Belk laughed somewhere. Ben looked around wildly for help. He could see no one. Behind him, down in the barrens, crickets drowsed and seagulls screamed. "You just better quit," he said. He wasn't blubbering yet, but was close to it. "You just better." "Or what?" Henry asked, if he was honestly interested. "You just better quit," he said. He wasn't blubbering yet, but close to it. "You just better." "Or what?" Harry asked, as if he was honestly interested. "Or what, Tits? Or what, huh?" But suddenly found himself thinking of Roderick Crawford, who played Don Matthews on Highway Patrol. That bastard was tough. That bastard was mean. That bastard took zero shit from anybody. And then he burst into tears. That Matthews would have belted these guys right through the fence, down the embankment, and into the pucker brush. He would have done it with his belly. "Oh boy, look at the baby," Victor chortled. Belch joined in. Henry smiled a little, but his face still held that grave, reflective cast. That look that was somehow almost sad. It frightened Ben. It suggested he might be in for more than just a beating. As if to confirm this idea, Henry reached into the jeans pocket and brought a buck knife. Ben's terror exploded. He had been sawing his body furtively to either side. Now he suddenly lunged straight forward. There was an instant in which he believed he was going to get away. He was sweating heavily, and the boys holding his arms had a greasy grip at best. Belk managed to hold on to his right wrist, but just barely. He pulled entirely free from Victor. Another lunge. Before he could make it, Henry stepped forward and gave him a shove. Ben flew backward. Then the railing creaked more loudly this time, and he felt it give a little under his weight. Buck and Victor grabbed him again. "Now you hold him," Henry said. "You hear me?" "Sure, Henry," Buck said. He sounded a trifle uneasy. He ain't gonna get away. Don't worry." Henry stepped forward until his flat stomach almost touched Ben's belly. Ben stared at him, tears spilling helplessly out of his wide eyes. "Caught! I'm caught!" A part of his mind jammered. He tried to stop it. He couldn't think at all with that jammering going on. But it wouldn't stop. "Caught! Caught! Caught!" Henry pulled out the blade, which was long and wide and engraved with his name. The tip glittered in the afternoon sunshine. "I'm gonna test you now," Henry said in that same reflective voice. It's exam time, Tits, and you better be ready." Ben wept. His heart thundered madly in his chest. Snot ran out of his nose and collected on his upper lip. His leathery books lay in scatter at his feet. Henry stepped on Bulldozer, glanced down, and dealt it into a gutter with a side sweep of one black engineer boot. Here's the first question on your exam, tits. When somebody says, "Let me copy" during finals, what are you going to say? Yes, Ben exclaimed immediately. I'm going to say yes, sure, okay, copy all you want. The box tip slid through 2 inches of air and pressed against Ben's stomach. It was as cold as an ice cube tray, just out of the Frigidaire. Ben gasped his belly away from it. For a moment the world went grey. Henry's mouth was moving, but Ben couldn't tell what he was saying. Henry was like a TV with the sound turned off, and the world was swimming. Don't you dare faint, the panicky voice shrieked. If you faint, he might get mad enough to kill you. The world came back into some kind of focus. He saw that both Belk and Victor had stopped laughing. They looked nervous, almost scared, seeing that had the effect of a head-clearing slap on Ben. Right. All of a sudden, they don't know what he's going to do or how far he might go. However bad you thought these things were, that's how bad they really are. Maybe even a little worse. You got to think, if you never did before or never do again, you better think now, because his eyes say they're right to look nervous. His eyes say he's crazy as a bedbug. That's the wrong answer, Tits, Henry said. If just anyone says let me copy, I don't give a red fuck what you do, got it? Yes, Ben said, his belly hitching with sobs. Yes, I got it. Well, okay, that's one wrong, but the biggies are still coming up. You ready for the biggies? Yeah, I guess so, yes. A car came slowly toward them. It was a dusty 51 Ford with an old man and woman propped up in the front seat, like a pair of neglected department store mannequins. Ben saw the old man's head turn slowly toward him. Henry stepped closer to Ben, hiding the knife. Ben could feel its point dumpling his flesh just above the belly button. It was still cold. He didn't see how that could be, but it was. Go ahead, yell, Henry said. You'll be picking your fucking guts off your sneakers. They were close enough to kiss. Ben could smell the sweet smell of juicy fruit gum on Henry's breath. The car passed and continued on down Kansas Street, as low and serene as the pace car in the Tournament of Roses parade. Alright, here's the second question. If I say let me copy during the finals, what are you going to say? Yes, I'll say yes right away. Henry smiled. That's good. You got that one right, Tits. Now, here's the third question. How am I going to be sure you never forget that? I don't know, Bill whispered. Henry smiled. His face lit up and was for a moment almost handsome. I know, he said, and as if he had discovered a great truth. I know, Tits. I'll carve my name on your big fat gut. Victor and Belk abruptly began laughing again. For a moment Ben felt a species of bewildered relief, thinking it had all been nothing but a make-believe, a little shock and jive. The three of them had whooped up to scare the living hell out of him, but Henry Bowers wasn't laughing, and Ben suddenly understood that Victor and Belk were laughing because they were relieved. It was obvious to both of them that Henry couldn't be serious. Except Henry was. The buck knife slid upward, smooth as butter. Blood welled in a bright red line on Ben's pallid skin. "Hey!" Victor cried. The word came out muffled in a startled gulp. "Hold him," Henry snarled. "You should hold him, hear me?" Now there was nothing grave and reflective on Henry's face. Now it was a twisted face of a devil. "Jesus Crow, Henry don't really cut him," Belk screamed. And his voice was high, almost a girl's voice. "Everything happens fast then, but to Ben Hanscom it all seems slow. It all seemed to happen in a series of shutter clicks, like action stills in a live magazine photo essay." His panic was gone. He had discovered something inside him suddenly, and because of it, had no use for panic. And no use for panic. That something just ate the panic whole. In the first shutter click, Henry had snatched his sweatshirt all the way up to his nipples. Blood was pouring from the shallow vertical cut above his belly button. In the second shutter click, Henry drew the knife down again, operating fast like a lunatic battle surgeon under an aerial bombardment. Fresh blood flowed backward. Ben thought coldly as blood flowed down and pulled between the waistband of his jeans and his skin. "Go to backward. That's the only direction I can get away in." Belk and Victor weren't holding him anymore. In spite of Henry's command, they had drawn away. They had drawn away in horror, but if he ran, Bowers would catch him. In the third shutter click, Henry connected the two vertical slashes with a sort of horizontal line. Ben could feel blood running into his underpants now, in a sticky snail trail. And a sticky snail trail was creeping down his left thigh. Henry leaned back momentarily, frozen with the studied concentration of an artist painting a landscape. After H comes E, Ben thought. And that was all it took to get him moving. He pulled forward a little bit, and Henry shoved him back again. Ben pushed with his legs, adding his own force to Henry's. He hit the whitewash railing between Kansas Street and the drop into the Barrens. As he did, he raised his right foot and planted it in Henry's belly. This was not a retaliatory act, but only wanted to increase the backward force, and yet he saw the expression of utter surprise on Henry's face. It was filled with a queer savage joy, a feeling so intense that for a split second he thought the top of his head was going to come off. Then there was a cracking, splintering sound from the railing. Ben saw Victor and Belk catch Henry before he could fall on his ass in the gutter next to the remains of the bulldozer, and then Ben was falling backward into space. He went with a scream that was half a laugh. Ben hit the slope on his back and buttocks, just below the culvert he had spotted earlier. It was a good thing he landed below it. If he had landed on it, he might well have broken his back. As it was, he landed on a thick cushion of weeds and a bracken of a barely fit and barely felt the impact. He did a backward somersault, feet and legs snapping over his head. He landed sitting up and went sliding down the slope backward as like a kid on a big green chute. His sweatshirt pulled up around his neck, his hands grabbing for purchase and doing nothing but yanking out tuft after tuft of bracken and wheatgrass. He was the top of the embankment. He saw the top of the embankment. It seemed impossible that he had just been standing up there, receding with crazy cartoon spin. He saw Victor and Bill, their faces front white O's, staring down at him. He had time to mourn his library books. Then he fetched up against something with agonizing force and nearly bit his tongue in half. It was a downed tree. It was a downed tree, and it checked Ben's fall by nearly breaking his left leg. He clawed his way back up. He clawed his way back up the slope a little bit, pulling his leg He saw the top of the it was a down tree, and he checked Ben's fall by nearly breaking his left leg. He clawed his way back up the slope a little bit, pulling his leg free with a groan. The tree had stopped him about halfway down. Below, the bushes were thicker. Water falling from the culvert ran over his hand in hamstring. There was a shriek from above him. Ben looked up again and saw Henry Bowers come flying over the drop, his knife clenched between his feet. He landed on both feet, body thrown backward at a steep angle so he would not overbalance. He skidded to the end of a gigantic set of footprints and then began to run down the embankment in a series of gangling kangaroo leaps. I'm going to eat you, it's. Henry was shrieking around the knife, and Ben didn't need an UN translator to tell him. Henry was saying, I'm going to kill you, tits. I am going to eat you. Now, with that cold general's eyes, he had discovered up on the sidewalk, Ben saw what he had to do. He managed to gain his feet just before Henry arrived, the knife now in his hand and held straight out in front of him like a bayonet. Ben was peripherally aware that the left leg of his chin was shredded, and his leg was bleeding much more heavily than his stomach, but it was supporting him. And that meant it wasn't broken. At least he hoped that that's what it meant. Ben crouched slightly to maintain his precarious balance, and as Henry grabbed at him with one hand and swept the knife in a long flat arc with the other, Ben stepped aside. He lost his balance, but as he fell down, he stuck out his shredded left leg. Henry's shins struck it, and his legs were bowed. But booted out from under him with great efficiency. For a moment, Ben gaped. This terror Ben gasped, his terror overcome with a mixture of awe and admiration. Harry Bowers appeared to be flying exactly like Superman over the fallen tree where Ben had stopped. His arms were straight up in front of him, the way George Reeves held his arms out of the TV show. Only George Reeves only looked like flying was as natural as taking a bath or eating lunch on the back porch. Henry looked like someone had shoved a hot poker up his ass. His mouth was opening and closing. A string of saliva was shooting back from one corner of it. And as Ben watched, it splattered against the lobe of Henry's ears. Then Harry crashed back to earth. The knife flew out of his hand. He rolled over on one shoulder. He rolled over on one shoulder and landed on his back, and slid away into the bushes with his legs played into V. There was a yell, a thud, and then a silence. Ben sat dazed, looking at the mad place in the bushes where Henry had done his disappearing act. Suddenly rocks and pebbles began to bounce by him. He looked up again. Benry and Bulk were now descending the embankment. They were moving more carefully than Harry, and hence more slowly. But they would reach him in 30 seconds or less if he didn't do something. He moaned. Would this lunacy never end? Keeping his eye on them, he clambered over the down tree and began to scramble down. Give me a second. Keeping his eye on them, he clambered over the down tree and began to scramble down the embankment. Landing harshly, he had a stitch in his tongue hurt like hell. The bushes were now almost as tall as Ben himself. The randy green smell of stuff growing out of control filled his nose. He could hear running water somewhere close, chuckling over stones and drilling between them. His feet slipped. His feet slipped, and here he went again, rolling and sliding, smashing the back of his hand against a jutting rock, shooting through a patch of thorns that looked blue-gray puffs of cotton from his sweatshirt, and little divots of meat from his hands and cheeks. He slammed to a jarring halt, sitting up with his feet in the water. It was a little curving stream, which wound its way into a thick stand of second-growth trees to his right. It looked as dark as a cave. In there he looked to his left and saw Henry Bowers lying on his back in the middle of the stream. His half-open eyes showed only whites. Blood trickled from one ear and ran toward Ben in delicate threads. Oh my god, I killed him. Oh my god, I am a murderer. Oh my god. Forgetting that Belch and Victor were behind him, or perhaps understanding they would lose all interest in beating the shit out of him when they discovered their fearless leader was dead, Ben splashed 20 feet upstream to where Henry lay. His shirt in ribbons, his shin soaked black and shogun. Ben was vaguely aware that there was precious little left of his own clothes, and that his body was one big rattletrap of aches and pains. His left ankle was the worst. It had already puffed tight against his soaking sneaker, and he was favoring it so badly, but his left ankle was the worst. It had already puffed tight against his soaking sneaker, and he was favoring it so badly that he was already not walking but lurking like a sailor on a shore for the first time after a long sea voyage. He bent over Henry Bowers. Henry's eyes popped wide open. He grabbed Ben's cuff with one scrapped and bloody hand. His mouth worked, and although nothing but a series of whistling aspirations emerged, Ben could still make out he was saying, "Kill you, you fat shit." Henry was trying to pull himself up, using Ben's legs as ball. Ben pulled backward frantically. Henry had slipped down. Then off. Ben flew backward, whirling his arms, and fell on his ass for a record-breaking third time in the last 4 minutes. He also bit his tongue again. Water splashed up around him. A rainbow glimmered for an instant in front of Ben's eyes. Ben didn't give a fuck about the rainbow, and didn't give a fuck about finding a pot of gold. He would settle for his miserable fat life. Henry rolled over, tried to stand, fell back, managed to get to his hands and knees, and finally tottered to his feet. He stared at Ben with those black eyes. The front of his flat top now leaned this way and that, like corn husk after a high wind had passed through. Ben was suddenly angry. No, this was more than being angry. He was infuriated. He had been walking with his library books under his arm, having an innocent little daydream about kissing Beverly Marsh, bothering nobody. And look at this. Shoes look. Pants shredded. Left ankle may be broken. Badly sprained for sure. Leg all cut up. All cut up. Tongue all cut up. Henry Bauer's monogram on his stomach. How about all that happy crappy, sports fan? But it was probably he thought of his library books, for which he was liable. But it was probably the thought of his library books for which he was liable that drove him to charge Henry Bowers. His lost library books and his mental image of how reproachful Mrs. Starrett's eyes would become when he told her whatever the reason got sprained library books or even the thought of a soggy and probably illegible rank card in his pocket. It was enough to get him moving. He lumbered forward, squashy kids spatting in the shallow water, and kicked Henry squarely in the balls. Henry uttered a horrid nasty scream that sent birds beating up from the trees. He stood spread-legged for a moment, hands clasping his crotch, staring unbelievingly at Ben. "Ugh," he said, in a small voice. "Right," Ben said. "Ugh," Henry said, even in a smaller voice. "Right," Ben said again. Henry sank slowly back to his knees, not so much falling as falling up. He was still looking at Ben with those unbelieving black eyes. "Ugh, damn right," Ben said. Henry fell on his side, still clutching his testicles, and began to roll slowly from side to side. "Ugh," Henry moaned. "My balls. Ugh. And you broke my balls. Ugh. Ugh." He was now beginning to gain a little force, and Ben started to back away a step at a time. He was sickened by what he was done, but he also filled with a kind of righteous, paralyzed fascination. I fucking suck. My fucking balls." Ben might have remained in the area for an untold length of time, perhaps even until Henry recovered enough to come after him. But just then a rock struck him over the right ear with such a deep drilling pain that until he felt warm blood flowing again. Ben thought he had been stung by a wasp. He turned and saw the other two striding up the middle of the stream toward him. They each had a handful of water around the rocks. Victor pecked one, and Ben heard it whistle past his ear. He ducked, and another struck his right knee, making him yell with a surprised hurt. A third bounced off his right cheekbone, and that eye filled with water. He scrambled for the far bank. Yeah, he lost it. He lost one eye, I remember. He scrambled for a far bank and climbed it as fast as he could, grabbing out onto portrait roots and hauling on handfuls of bushes. He made it to the top. One final stone struck his buttock as he pulled himself up, and took a quick look back over his shoulder. Ben was kneeling beside Henry while Victor stood half a dozen feet away, firing stones on the size of a baseball clip through the man-high bushes beside Ben. He had seen enough. In fact, he had seen much more than enough. Worse of all, Henry Bowers was getting up again. Like Ben's own Timex watcher, Henry could take a licking and keep on ticking. Ben turned and smashed his way into the bushes, lumbering along in a direction he hoped was west. If he could cross the old Cape side of the Barrens, he could beg a dime of somebody and take the bus home. And when he got there, he would lock the door behind him and bury these tattered bloodclots in the trash. And this crazy dream will finally be over. Ben thought of himself sitting in his chair in the living room, freshly tubbed, wearing his fussy red bathrobe, watching Daffy Duck cartoons on the mighty 90 and drinking milk through a strawberry flavored straw. Hold that thought, he told himself grimly, and kept lumbering along. Bushes sprang into his face. Ben pushed them aside. Thorns reached and clawed. He tried to ignore them. He came to a flat area of the ground that was black and mucky. A thick sand of bamboo-like growth spread across it, and a fetid smell rose from the earth. An ominous thought, quicksand, slipped across the foreground of his mind like a shadow as he looked at the sheen of standing water deeper into the grove of bamboo stalk. He didn't want to go in there, even if it wasn't quicksand. The mud would suck his sneakers off. He turned right instead, running along the front of the bamboo grove, and finally into a patch of real woods. The trees, mostly firs, were thick, growing everywhere, battling each other for a little space and sun. But there was less undergrowth, and he could move faster. He was no longer sure what direction he was moving in, but still, true he was, unmeasured, a little ahead of the game. The barrens were enclosed by the rye on three sides and bounded by the half-finished turnpike extension on the fourth. Sooner or later he would come out somewhere. His stomach troubled painfully, and he pulled up the remains of his sweatshirt for a look. He winced and drew a whistle of air in over his teeth. His belly looked like a grotesque Christmas tree ball, all caked red blood and smeared green from his slide down the embankment. He pulled the sweatshirt down again. Looking at the mess made him feel like blowing lunch. Now he heard a low hammering noise from ahead. It was one steady note just above the low range of his hearing. An adult intent an adult only intent only on getting the hell out of there. The mosquitoes had found Ben now, and while nowhere near as big as sparrows, they were pretty big, would have ignored it or simply not heard it at all. But Ben was a boy, and he was already getting over his fright. He swerved to his left. He swerved to his left and pushed through some low laurel bushes. Beyond them, sticking out of the ground, were the top 3 feet of a cement cylinder about 4 feet wide. It was capped with a bent iron manhole cover. The cover was stamped with the words, "There is sour death." The sound, this close, it was more a drone than a hum, was coming from someplace deep inside. Ben put one eye to a manhole but could see nothing. He could hear the drone and water running down there someplace, but that was all. He took a break. He took a breath, got a whiff of a sour smell that was both dank and shitty, and drew back with the winds. It was a sewer, that was all, or maybe a combined sewer and drainage tunnel. There were plenty of those in flood-conscious Durai. No big deal, but it had given him a funny sort of chill. Part of it was seeing the handiwork of a man in all this overgrown jumble of wilderness, but he supposed part of it was the shape of the thing itself, that concrete cylinder jutting out of the ground. Ben had read H.G. Wells' The Time Machine the year before, first the classic comics version and then the whole book. This cylinder with its bended iron cap reminded him of the walls which led down into the country of the slumped and horrible Morlocks. He mowed away from it quickly, trying to find west again. He got to a little clearing and turned into until his shadow was as directly behind him as he could get it. Then he headed off in a straight line. 5 minutes later, he heard more running water ahead, and voices, kids' voices. He stopped to listen, and that was when he heard snapping branches and other voices behind him. They were perfectly recognizable. They belonged to Victor Buck and the one and only Henry Bowers. The nightmare was not over yet, it seemed. Ben looked around for a place to go earth. Alright. That was all for this video. Remember, if you want to support the stream, you can follow. I suggest you do that. That's completely for free and it costs you nothing. Follow, or you can subscribe by paying $4.99 a month using a credit card or another electronic payment mean. Or you can also use your monthly option that Amazon Prime gives you for your monthly subscription to that service. Or if you can, or if you want, that will make me greatly happy. You can support the stream by contributing with any amount of money you feel like it's fair. We are aiming for a $500 donation goal by the end of the year. So you can, I don't know, contribute in whatever way you can. If you enjoy it, if you enjoy it so much that you want to be a part of it, you can also join the Discord channel, Discord server, for which you will find the link on the information panel on the Twitch stream or on the YouTube video if that's what you're watching. If you're watching this through YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Everywhere you're watching it, doesn't matter where, you can turn on the notification bell so you can know when the next event occurs. Also follow me on Twitter @Boianover. You can see that on the top left of the screen. That's enough for now. Maybe I'll come back later to continue with this. Take care of yourself. Later.